From the very first words, the tone is not that of instruction, but of quiet companionship. Hello, my beloved friend. Grace and peace to you this morning. It doesn't feel like a sermon. It feels like someone who has walked through storms sitting down beside you, looking you in the eye, and saying gently, I see you. In a world that constantly demands performance, productivity, and perfection, this kind of opening lands softly, yet deeply. It doesn't rush to fix you. It doesn't rush to teach or correct. It simply welcomes you. And in that moment, if you are weary from anxiety that wakes you up before your alarm does, weary from the weight of responsibilities that feel heavier than your own strength, weary from trying to be strong for everyone else while feeling empty inside, you feel known. Not analyzed. Not evaluated. Known. There's something sacred about feeling understood without needing to explain. That's what this kind of content offers. It creates a holy pause in a life full of noise. It becomes a spiritual exhale. When the voice says, grace and peace to you, it is not a formality. It's a divine declaration that you are seen in your current condition and loved in it. Not once you get it together. Not once you fix the mess. But right now. Just as you are. For someone who wakes up overwhelmed, who has to talk themselves into facing another day, these words act like a blanket, not the heavy kind that adds weight, but the warm kind that wraps around you with safety. There is tenderness here. A recognition that sometimes the hardest part of the day is just getting up. Just opening your eyes. Just choosing to hope again. The beauty of this moment is that it offers no pressure. There is no checklist. No spiritual comparison. No command to try harder. Instead, it is an invitation. An invitation to be present. To be still. To be real. And when that invitation comes without judgment, it becomes easier to accept. Easier to take a breath. Easier to whisper a prayer, even if all you can say is, help me, Lord. This is where the shift happens. Not from duty but from delight. Not from fear but from comfort. You begin to realize that God is not waiting at the finish line with a scorecard. He's right beside you at the starting line, whispering, you don't have to do this alone. And when a voice reminds you of that, not with hype or noise, but with calm assurance, it calms the chaos within. Sometimes what we need most is not a dramatic miracle, but a gentle reminder that we are not invisible. That the pressure we carry has not gone unnoticed. That even if the world seems indifferent to our pain, heaven is not. And perhaps the most healing part of all is simply knowing that someone, somewhere, understands. That someone has put into words the exact ache you couldn't name. You listen, and something softens in you. Not because your circumstances have changed, but because your heart has been met with compassion. And that changes everything. It changes how you breathe. It changes how you approach the rest of the day. It changes how you see yourself. So you let the words linger. You let the quiet wash over you. And maybe, just maybe, you believe it, you are not forgotten. You are not too much. You are not alone. And you do not have to hold yourself together today by your own strength. Because someone greater is holding you. This is the power of being seen without judgment. This is the grace of being greeted not with expectations, but with peace. And this is why, in that still and sacred moment, something inside you whispers back, thank you. I needed this more than I knew. There is a quiet relief that washes over you when you realize that God is not asking you to be strong. He is not measuring your faith by how positive you sound or how composed you appear. In this sacred space, you're not required to hold it all together. You're simply invited to be honest. And that honesty, raw and unpolished, is enough. So much of life demands strength. Be productive. Be resilient. Be okay. The world trains us to hide our weariness behind smiles and to filter our pain through phrases like, I'm fine. But in the presence of God, you are not asked to perform. You are invited to exhale. To stop pretending. To stop pushing. to stop running. Here, vulnerability is not weakness. It is worship. When the prayer says, "I don't want motivation, I want revelation," something inside you sighs in agreement. Because there comes a point where motivation is no longer enough. Where pep talks feel hollow. Where you don't need to be told to keep going, you need to be reminded that you're not going alone. That God is with you, even in the heaviness. Even in the hidden places where you've run out of strength and hope and words. There is a holy comfort in knowing that you don't have to fake joy in order to meet with Jesus. That you can bring your sighs, your silence, your sorrow, and He will still draw near. You don't have to climb your way up to Him. He meets you where you are. In the messy middle. In the anxiety you can't shake. In the grief you thought you should have healed from by now. In the confusion of not knowing what to pray, but still showing up. This is not a faith that demands perfection. This is a faith that welcomes your fatigue. That says, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Rest not just for your body, but for your soul. For the part of you that has been pretending for too long. For the part of you that smiles through pain because no one seems to notice when you're not okay. For the part of you that's tired of carrying strength like armor. There is something deeply healing in hearing someone say, "You don't have to be strong today." Because it speaks directly to the pressure we feel but rarely admit. The pressure to be the dependable one. The spiritual one. The strong one. But what if strength today looks like softness? What if faith looks like falling apart in front of God, and trusting that He holds all your pieces better than you do? In that space, you learn a different kind of strength. Not the kind that fights to survive, but the kind that surrenders to love. That says, "I can't, but you can." That whispers, "I'm done pretending," and discovers that grace meets you right there. You begin to understand that you don't need to feel full of faith to be full of God's presence. That He is drawn to the humble, to the brokenhearted, to those whose prayers are more tears than words. And in that nearness, you discover that the pressure is not yours to carry. That the burden lifts when you let go of being impressive and simply allow yourself to be real. You realize you were never called to be a hero of your story. You were called to be held. To be known. To be loved. And maybe for the first time in a long time, you breathe. Really breathe. Not the shallow breath of surviving, but the deep breath of surrender. And in that breath, you find God. Not as a taskmaster, but as a father. Not as a judge, but as a comforter. Not asking for more of your effort, but offering more of His embrace. So today, you stop striving. You stop pushing. You stop proving. And you let go. You rest in the truth that you don't need to be strong for God to show up. He already has. And He's holding you. Right here. Right now. Just as you are. There are moments when a prayer doesn't just sound beautiful, it strikes something deep within you. It doesn't feel like someone else's words anymore. It feels like yours. The very things you've been carrying, the thoughts you could never quite articulate, the emotions you've buried under schedules and smiles, suddenly, they are being spoken aloud. And not just spoken, but offered up to God with honesty and reverence. When the prayer says, "I bring you the fears I've never spoken," your chest tightens. Because you know what those fears are. The ones that hide behind laughter. The ones you avoid by staying busy. The ones that creep in during quiet moments and keep you up at night. You've carried them so long they feel like part of you. But here, in this sacred space of prayer, they are named. And something inside you begins to break, not in despair, but in release. The tears come quietly. Not because you're sad, but because you're seen, deeply, spiritually, undeniably seen. And for maybe the first time, you don't feel like you need to translate your pain for God to understand it. He already knows. And He welcomes it. The line, "I don't want to just survive this day, I want to walk with you in it," lands like a cry your soul has been echoing for years. Because you know what it feels like to merely survive. To wake up and count down the hours until you can go back to bed. To push through the day, meeting obligations but feeling absent inside. You know how exhausting it is to pretend that functioning is the same as living. But this prayer offers something different. It dares to hope that God doesn't just want you to survive. He desires to walk with you, talk with you, carry the weight you never should have held alone. And that realization is overwhelming in the most healing way. This is not a performance. This is not a show. It is the language of surrender, spoken in the dialect of the soul. When those words are voiced aloud, they become more than sentences, they become lifelines. They say what you didn't know you were allowed to say. They create a space where your mess isn't disqualified, but invited. Where your doubts don't discredit you, but draw you closer. Somewhere between the words and the silence between them, something begins to shift. You begin to believe that your brokenness is not a barrier. That your honesty is not too much. God is not waiting for you to get it together before He shows up. He's already here, in the ache, in the fatigue, in the whispered prayer through trembling lips. There is a profound power in recognizing yourself in a prayer. It means you're not invisible. It means you're not the only one who feels this way. And even more than that, it means God has already made space for those feelings. He has already prepared grace for that ache, comfort for that fear, strength for that weakness. And as the words continue, you find your voice in them. You start to pray to them, not just listen. You start to claim them, not just admire. You stop analyzing and start absorbing, and slowly, a quiet confidence begins to rise. A sacred trust that God is not only listening, He's responding. You realize that you don't need eloquence to be heard. You don't need to be fixed to be embraced. You just need to come. To open your heart and let Him in. Because this is the kind of prayer that doesn't just inform you, it transforms you. It teaches you that there is no such thing as too raw for God. That your truth, however unfiltered, is safe with Him. That your longing to be known and your desire to be healed are not burdens, but bridges. Bridges that carry you from despair to hope. From hiding to healing. So you let the tears fall. You let the silence linger. And in that holy stillness, you whisper back, maybe for the first time with full sincerity, "Lord, this is what I've always wanted to say. Thank you for hearing me." There is a kind of peace that doesn't need explanation. It arrives not in grand displays or loud declarations, but in the quiet spaces where the soul finally exhales. When everything around you is noisy, the notifications, the headlines, the pressures, the pretending, peace becomes a rare and holy thing. And in the closing words of the prayer, something sacred begins to settle in your chest. Jesus, you are my first thought today. It's more than a sentence. It's a return. A coming home. In a world that constantly pulls your attention in 1,000 directions, that one sentence calls you back to center. It whispers, before anything else defines you today, let it be this: you belong to God. There is deep rest in that belonging. Not a passive rest, but a grounding rest. A rest that doesn't require the absence of problems, only the presence of God. It doesn't mean your life is quiet, but that your spirit is no longer at war within itself. The storm might still rage outside, but inside, the waters have calmed. Because in that one sentence, you've made a choice. You've declared what matters most. And that decision shifts everything. Let your whisper override every worry. You hear those words and something inside you softens. Because you've known worry intimately. You've walked with it like a shadow. It greets you in the morning, follows you through your day, and whispers at night when you're trying to rest. But this moment offers something radically different. It doesn't tell you to fix your worry. It doesn't shame you for feeling it. It invites you to let something louder, stronger, and gentler speak over it. God's whisper doesn't compete. It doesn't shout over the chaos. It simply speaks with authority, and everything else quiets. And when you let that whisper be the loudest voice in your heart, peace isn't just possible, it's inevitable. There is something deeply transformative about starting your day here. In stillness. In surrender. Not performing. Not posturing. Just present. Just open. Just real. And it is in this space that you realize, this is what your soul has been craving all along. No more information. Not more accomplishment. But communion. Connection, a moment with your Creator before the world tries to name you, claim you, and direct you. This is the place where striving ends. Where pretending breaks. Where pressure lifts. And it's not because your life suddenly became easier, but because you've stopped carrying it alone. You remember again that you were never meant to. In this gentle ending, you feel the beginning of something new. A shift. A breath. A holy awareness. The kind that doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. The kind that reorients your day, not with tasks, but with truth. And the truth is, you are held. You are loved. You are not walking into your day alone. God goes before you, walks beside you, and carries what you cannot. So you let the prayer wash over you like morning light. Not harsh, but healing. Not forced, but freeing. And in the soft echoes of its final words, you realize you're not just saying something beautiful. You're stepping into it. You're choosing to begin not from anxiety, but from alignment. Not from hurry, but from holiness. And in that choice, peace finds its home in you. You sit a little longer. You breathe a little deeper. And the stillness doesn't feel empty anymore. It feels full. Full of God's nearness. Full of sacred quiet. Full of the kind of belonging that doesn't need to be earned. This is where you were always meant to begin. Not scrolling. Not rushing. But remembering. Remembering who God is. Remembering who you are. Remembering that before you do anything today, before you prove, produce, or plan, you are already loved. Jesus, you are my first thought today. Let your whisper override every worry. You speak the words, not just aloud, but from your spirit. And in that holy moment, you don't just feel peaceful. You know you are home. There is a moment after the final amen when the stillness doesn't end the prayer, it deepens it. You're not rushing to get on with your day. You're sitting there, heart open, soul stirred. Something has shifted inside of you. The prayer didn't just comfort you. It called you, and that call is clear. You don't want to return to life as usual. You want to live differently, starting now. There's something sacred about that desire. It doesn't come from guilt or pressure, but from awakening. A kind of inner clarity that says, I can't keep giving the best of myself to things that drain me, while giving God what's left over. I want more. Not more noise. No more success. More presence. More purpose. More of Him. The invitation to write one sentence to God each morning isn't just a spiritual exercise. It's an act of alignment. It says, before the world speaks into my life, I will let the one who made me have the first word. Before I check my phone, I will check my heart. Before I respond to the demands of the day, I will respond to the love of my Father. This isn't about becoming someone else. It's about returning to who you truly are. That sentence you write becomes a declaration. It could be as simple as, Lord, I belong to you today. Or, speak, Father. I'm listening, or, help me walk in your strength, not mine. But no matter the words, it becomes a sacred echo that begins to shape your mornings and your mindset. Let your morning become an altar. Not an obligation, but a holy habit. A place where you meet with God not to impress, but to be impressed upon. Where you lay down your worries before you pick up your responsibilities. Where you choose worship before you face the world. This is not the performance of religion. This is the posture of revival. You start to see differently. The small moments become sacred. The chaos becomes quieter. The day no longer controls you, You walk into it carrying peace, purpose, and the voice of God still ringing in your spirit. You begin to resist the pull to let culture define you, and instead let your Creator affirm you. No more letting anxiety narrate your story before grace has a chance to speak. This is where transformation begins. Not in trying harder, but in turning sooner. In seeking first. In realizing that spiritual hunger is not a weakness, it's an invitation, and you're done ignoring it. You're done filling your mornings with everything but the one who gives the day meaning. From now on, you begin with God. You begin with the truth. You begin with surrender. And in that surrender, you begin to feel empowered. Because surrender isn't passive. It's the most courageous way to live. It means no longer letting autopilot steer your decisions. It means no longer living numb or distracted. It means letting your faith dictate your rhythm, not your fear. And something inside you whispers, "This is who I was meant to be all along." You don't need a dramatic overhaul. You need a consistent return. And it starts with one sentence. One altar. One choice is to listen before you react. One moment of silence that says, "God, you have my attention. You have my heart. You have my yes." When you rise with this intention, the rest of your day is different. Not because everything goes perfectly, but because you are no longer the same. The world doesn't get to name you before your Father does. The pressures don't get to define your pace. The fear doesn't get to speak louder than your faith. You write your sentence. You breathe it in. You speak it aloud. And as the sun rises outside your window, something rises within you, too. A holy boldness. A quiet fire. A determination not to go back to how things were. You don't just want a peaceful morning. You want a new way of living. Today is the day. This is the moment. And it begins not with striving, but with stillness. Not with proving, but with praying. Not with a checklist, but with a sentence that reorients your soul. God, let this be the day I begin again, with you. There is something beautiful that happens when you hear an invitation, not as a demand, but as a recognition. It doesn't come wrapped in pressure or expectation. It comes softly, almost like a whisper to your spirit. Comment below, "Jesus, you are my first thought today." Share this with someone who needs a new beginning. And when you hear those words, you don't feel obligated, you feel included. You feel part of something. Because faith was never meant to be a solo journey. And yet, so often, it feels like one. You carry burdens silently. You whisper prayers that no one hears. You scroll through highlights while your own soul feels low. But in this moment, there is a reminder that you are not walking alone. There is a thread that connects you to others who are also waking up with tired hearts and hopeful spirits. Others who are choosing, just like you, to put Jesus first. You type the words, not because someone told you to, but because something inside you needs to say it. Jesus, you are my first thought today. And in that small act, you step into a sacred community. A space where declarations aren't shouted to impress, but whispered to connect. Where faith is not performance, but presence. Where your voice matters, and your heart is welcome. You begin to realize that the simple act of sharing this moment might be someone else's lifeline. That sending this message, posting that sentence, or tagging a friend isn't just digital interaction, it's ministry. It's extending an open door to someone who might be standing in the hallway of hopelessness. It's saying, "I see you. I thought of you. And God sees you, too." The beauty of this connection is that it isn't built on similarity. It's built on sincerity. You might not know the exact battles someone else is facing, but you do know the power of being seen. You know what it feels like to be reminded that you're not forgotten. That someone, somewhere, paused long enough to care. And when you share this with someone else, you offer them a breath. A moment. A holy interruption. Maybe they were spiraling. Maybe they were numb. Maybe they were hanging by a thread. And your act of reaching out becomes the hand of grace extended. Not flashy, not loud, but real. You start to understand that this is what the body of Christ is meant to look like. Not just a crowd gathered in buildings, but hearts linked across time zones and screens. People rising in different places but echoing the same truth: Jesus is the center. Jesus is the anchor. Jesus is the beginning of this day, and the hope for all that follows. This connection isn't limited by distance. It transcends algorithms and schedules. It reaches into the heart. You're not just watching or listening, you're participating. And that participation awakens something in you. It tells you that your faith, however quiet, matters. That your response, however small, is seen in heaven.